This meeting, excuse me. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones and telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron. The notice of non-discrimination rights and protections to beneficiaries regarding the federal Title 6 non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is available on the Old Colony Planning Council. Contact Mary at 508-583-1833.
Thank you. So I'll do the roll call if I could. Oh, there we go. Becky Coletta.
Okay, Becky.
I'm here. I'm still trying to somehow get my camera working.
Christine Joy.
Present.
Sandra Wright.
Present.
Stephen Santasonio.
Present.
Lee Hartman.
Present.
Right. And so, so if I could, we can just go right into the information that I had shared with, I was not listening very well to Megan. As I shared in the notes, Charlie had attended a MARPA meeting in terms of some of the federal terms and condition. FERCOG is the Franklin County, they had a meeting with various folks in terms of, these are just the notes again, some of the conversations between the regional planning agency members themselves. And so, there was a lot of, this was highlighted in the notes just saying about going back to the boards, which is something that I probably would do anyway, and not to necessarily be suggested in that there is some language, and this is the language that was included in your packet in terms of the federal highway specifically, about recipients to ensure federal funding expended, not include, I'll just read through it so it's read in the record. The recipient shall ensure that federal funding is expended in full accordance with the United States Constitution, federal law, statutory and public policy requirements, including but not limited to those protecting free speech, religious liberty, public welfare and environment, and prohibiting discrimination. And the recipient will cooperate with federal officials in the enforcement of federal law, including cooperations with and not impeding U.S. immigration, customs enforcement, and other federal offices and components of the Department of Homeland Security in the enforcement of federal immigration law. The failure of this grant agreement shall expressly identify federal law applicable to the recipient or activities under this grant agreement shall not make an agreement does not make that law inapplicable. Implementation of executive orders, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity by entering into this segment. The recipient certifies that it does not operate any programs promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI initiatives that violate any applicable federal anti-discrimination laws. That's the first one. And this master agreement pretty much goes into what I just had read. This is March 26, 2025. Unless you really want me to continue to read into it, you get the gist of the two elements in terms of not impeding the U.S. immigration customs, and then the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if I could, I want to just leave it at that. If there were any questions.
No questions.
So I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
So the do we know if this language has been through any sort of regulatory process?
Charlie?
I don't know if it has, but I believe it's somehow wrapped up in the litigation brought by Attorney General Campbell.
So,
and it's part of a larger thing, and I think it's more nationwide and just some context. So these contract terms and agreements will need to be signed if we get a federal grant. So with MassDOT, the the federal money goes to MassDOT and then the MassDOT money comes to us. So we don't think this language will be in a MassDOT contract because what we're getting is actual state money.
Right,
And
but
this-
won't this, I mean, typically with federal money, when I've done private sector contracting, if one person gets,
Flows through to the end.
if there's a flow down provision, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that if this is given to the state would, I don't know if the state would sign and then litigate over the enforceability of these provisions, or if the state would refuse to sign and then not have money to flow down to us. But typically there are flow down provisions on these kind of contract terms. Do you know anything about
Well,
that?
one of the stories that's still being written is the difference between discretionary grants and formula funds. So for example, we're waiting on the quadruple P grant agreement, which was a federal discretionary grant award. So presumably, if and when that comes, the grant agreement would have these terms and conditions versus formula funds for the TIP or, the federal PL dollars for planning that comes through a formula grant. And we don't believe the state actually signed an agreement with the feds to get that formula money. And the same with the AAA, where they get flow through dollars. Federal dollars come to the state, and I don't recall what the new name of the aging group in the state is. It's some cool name now, but it's the same thing. The AAA gets formula funds as opposed to a discretionary grant funds. So
That makes a lot of sense, that the sort of grant, the formula funds may just come through some sort of authorization without a separate contract with the states. Whereas if it's an actual grant that we're signing or that the state's signing, it would have contract terms like these.
so the difference. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the one thing about the language that's interesting is Mary, what you were reading said you don't operate any DEI programs that conflict with federal law or something, or federal discrimination law.
Pull it
There
back
was
up.
there was a second phrase to it.
Mhm.
So it says you don't operate any programs promoting DEI initiatives that violate any applicable federal anti-discrimination laws. And this is kind of where the rub is right now, right? DEI programs, most of them, the way they're run, aren't discriminating against anyone. They're attempts to be more inclusive. And I have yet to see an actual case. I'm sure DEI programs exist that end up being discriminatory against someone, but I don't really see a lot of case law that says that DEI programs violate federal anti-discrimination laws. And generally, people do operate based on merit, but they also consider a constellation of how someone's going to add to a mix in a way that, if you have 3 people with a lot of merit, you think, okay, who's going to add a different perspective to this mix? And so it is interesting to me that that language is in there. In some ways makes me somewhat more comfortable with the language, because it's saying you can't discriminate. And I don't expect that we have or would discriminate. So I that's sort of a comment on the language as it exists here.
I agree with that.
Mary, I've got a question for you. What would we ever do to cooperate or not impede ICE? I mean, what type of access to information do we have that they're going to come to us and say, hey, I need your help?
Our personnel records, probably. If there might be suspicious or something. I mean, I think that really would be the only thing that I could think of.
Well, no, they could also ask for questions about our contractors and who our contractors contractors are hiring, right? So if we're,
Say we have CDM Smith as a contractor.
well, CDM Smith is probably an easy one, but let's say we're, if we're managing, so Charlie, I don't know how much information you get if on our DOT where we're managing the tip process. Do you get any information about subcontractors or contractors where they might be using people in the construction trades who are who might be the subject of enforcement actions for some reason?
No,
Oh.
because the money flows through MassDOT
Okay,
to the town, to the contractor. So it would, in our opinion, would be the enforcement of MassDOT overseeing the community and the contractors.
but would you have information that MassDOT has? So if MassDOT failed to cooperate with the federal government because they were in the middle of litigation, would we have information about contractors and subcontractors that
So-
MassDOT would also have?
So the contractors, for example, we know who the contractors are doing the construction on a tip project, like PA Landers or Lawrence Lynch, for example. It's the big companies.
But do we have any non-public information? Like that's actually available on the TIP website, right? Or on the not
Right.
TIP, but the
Portal.
DOT website.
Yeah, we don't have employment rosters of the contractors or
Okay,
their subs.
right. So that would all
Going
be,
back to Christine's question in terms of what they would be requesting. It's either employment or they may want a copy of our contract. I mean,
Mary, do they have to disclose that information to us, that what they are, or, if they're going?
we have forms that are required by the state of Massachusetts and United
Right.
States, that there are forms,
so we have I-9 forms that are employment forms that were put in place back in the 80s or 90s as part
Yeah.
of immigration reform. And so every employer, including, I would assume us, has I-9 forms. The issue could be that you have somebody who has a visa that then is taken away, right? A lot of times when you hire someone on an I-9 form, if they have something like temporary protected status, like I know an employer who runs programs for people with developmental disabilities. They have a lot of people who are on temporary protected status and they have work authorizations. And they're about to lose many employees because that temporary protected authorization is going to go away in August for people who had work authorizations. I don't know if our I-9 process would easily tell us if we had somebody who was on a status that went away.
we're going through something right now. Just there is an I-9 and there's a young man who has come to the country when he was 15 years old, went to school. So we have information and we're going to continue to hire that young man to be an assistant to Megan. So I mean, that's a little bit deep, but I think the point is that there are systems in place that we have information and that back to Christine's question about, what would ICE be pursuing from us if that happened would, I think it really is mostly either HR files and or potentially contracts, because I can't see any other reason. I mean, we don't have anybody living here. We don't have anybody in our back office and renting anymore. Those kind of things, right? We're not renting to a company that might be suspicious. It's just us here. Does that answer your question, Christine? Okay.
Well, and also, I mean, if we think about it, these aren't contract terms that are targeting us, right? They're contract terms that are going to flow through to all of these types of grants, as I understand it. So, so we're being asked, it would probably affect us less than other people who are actually like a municipality that's going to run the grant, or somebody who's actually going to hire the contractors and the subs, where they might have an enforcement action coming after their contractors or subs.
So let me, if I could, to the members, I have thought about this since day one, right? We knew some of the things that have been coming out of DC and some of the potential discussions about doing away with DEI and things of that nature. It is certainly the policy of, that's why we're talking today in terms of the executive committee. I do feel that my obligation, not only to doing the work that we've been charged to do with this, to our 17 communities and the 6 other AAA, but it's also, to the value of the work we do. Why we have gained better reputation is because we have staff who are dedicated and professional and caring and compassionate and go that extra mile when being in the town of Whitman or Abington to work with the community members, right? That's not going to change. I don't expect it to change. And I think that if I as a manager have anything change to the contrary, we're probably going to lose staff. In the case of doing what is needed to maintain our organization and the work we do, I don't see anything that we are currently involved with impeding. The only thing that I think that has come to play, and Becky and I had some conversations about this, and I reached out to Yolando Spinola, is that he's the chair of our DEI committee, the newly developed DEI committee that we worked on with our bylaws. We do say it in there. There is language that we have that within the committee about supporting that, and we have not eliminated it. I have not suggested to eliminate it, but that could be, a potential if one takes a look at our bylaws and our subcommittees, whether on our website, or our values or our mission statement, one might interpret that. But again, it goes back to the quality of the work that our staff do on a day in, day out. We have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have independents on our staff, but they are all one in working together for the right purposes for our community. We stay focused. We really do.
There, I wonder if we might be able to use the language on DEI from this language in DEI about, you won't do it as non-discrimination, and put it into our bylaws, that our policy is that we have, that we are mindful of the fact that if you implement any DEI policies, that you would not violate any applicable federal anti-discrimination laws. And so it's a little tricky. I will say that in other contexts, I have heard of other grant recipients based on the executive order who have lost funding because they had words like a diversity, equity, and inclusion on their website. I actually heard of one very large grant that was taken away from a housing nonprofit that only had the word inclusivity, and they lost a $20 million grant that was shut the organization down. So at some point, tonight, if we adopt this language, or agree to a policy that says we'll sign contracts with this language, which I kind of feel like we have to, in fairness to our communities, we probably do need to at least look at those bylaws to not have our funding at risk.
Yeah, I would go a step further and say that we need to remove any reference that we have, temporarily. It's just the political environment. But I think it's not only just agreeing to this language, but removing anything that references DEI from our website, from our bylaws, just temporarily. And once the political climate changes, and it will, we can go put it back in. But there's way too much for our employees and our towns to lose over something on principle. And it's a shame that that's where we are, but I think it all needs to come down just so we can keep doing the good work, and we'll still do it. We just don't say it. Right, Mary? Am I off at all?
It is, as I mentioned in one of them, I think my earlier, it goes against the grain of who I am and what I stand for.
Yep.
But I am employed by this organization, and so was Charlie and Paul and the staff, and we need to continue to do the good work. We really do.
Well,
So-
and I always say that we do come from different political stripes, but I think at my core, I'm also pragmatic. And the pragmatic part of me agrees with Lee that we need to, we can look at whether or not there's other policies that have been acceptable that talk in terms of belonging, for example, or, holding space for people of different backgrounds, of
Well-
all kinds of different backgrounds,
I
one
might,
of-
su- I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, I might suggest, if I could, to this executive committee representing the full board, is for an action item for today to instruct me as the executive director to review all of our bylaws and handbooks and documents that we have to eliminate words that would be in contrary to what seems to be the language suggested by the federal government, and to continue doing our good work. That's
And I'll
we-
make that motion and add to it to adopt the language that we actually started this conversation with.
I'll second
Mary,
that.
I have a question before we do that. Thank you, Lee, for doing that. Can we do this through like a resolution of, what we want it to be, what we want it to say, versus eliminating completely?
I'd rather leave it up to Mary with
Right.
what Lee said, go through the document, let's not poke the bear and just get it done. And not draw attention to it by a resolution. I think we
Yeah.
just need to get it done.
And I would say my motion should have the words reluctantly.
Right.
I'll second that. I think Steve did.
So
Yeah.
on,
Okay, so roll call, Mary?
yes, Becky Coletta,
Accept.
Christine Joy,
Except,
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Stephen Santisonio,
Accept.
Sandra Wright,
Except,
and Noreen O'Toole.
except,
And if I could, then Mary, you'll report back to us in one form or another. It might be better to do it on Zoom and not by an email, which is public record. Not so much what we've done. I mean, it's okay to report what the result is, just so maybe we want to just schedule another meeting so you can report back to us. So we're not in some kind of a public records request information that shows something. I mean, it's all there, but it's probably better to discuss what you did verbally and then show what we've done in written and print format.
And I appreciate that, Lee. I will do, time-wise, just, so we have our annual meeting, which is the 22nd, and there's a lot going on. What I'm gonna recommend is, perhaps if we can do an executive committee in July, it will give me enough time to get through these next couple of weeks and then go through all the documents and, as you said, give an update to this executive committee.
And I would make it clear from my standpoint, I don't want to speak for anyone else here, that if you find something that you feel is urgent that needs to be done tomorrow, for example, do it.
Okay, that's
Right.
helpful. Okay.
exactly. I agree.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Then thank you, seriously, for the conversation as much as anything else that is been on the docket. So if you give me one more second so I can pull.
Do we also need to open a second meeting so that we can take care of whatever, Mary, you needed us to do for
I
the
actually-
annual
I-
meeting?
Well, there are a couple more items. Let me just, I'm gonna.
Go back to the agenda?
Yes, please. So that was one item. The second item was that this executive committee serving as the nominating committee. Oops, did I do this wrong already? Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right.
Mary's, the meeting's the 25th, not the 22nd. Correct?
The meeting
Annual.
is that's correct, the 25th. The annual meeting is the 25th.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
That's Sunday.
what we have before you is if there was a reaching out to existing members and, oh, is this, okay. Do I have the wrong agenda up? Sorry. I think I do.
you may have Rom. You
I
got,
have
Yeah,
Rom
no,
up.
this is
Yeah.
June 12th. Yeah.
Well,
Fine.
but don't we have, that's why I thought we had Ram right at 6:15
Yeah, but let me go back, but we still have a nominating committee of the executive.
of the executive. Okay, I'm
This is
trying
where
to
I'm gonna-
open
This is
the
where I'm gonna
two
say to
agendas.
you you were deeply missed when trying to go through this, like, okay, now let's do this again. All right, here we go. So we talked about the contracts and terms. Thank you for the motion. And then on top of that is the nominating committee. There is a current slate of officers that I did have before. Becky Coletta for president, Noreen O'Toole as vice president, and Christine Joy as treasurer. In light of Frank Staffier was the chair, I couldn't pull together a committee meeting of that. So the executive committee is serving as the nominating committee.
So the question would be, are there any other suggestions or nominations?
And there had not been.
So I will make a motion to recommend to the council that we approve the slate as presented. Or
Second.
represent.
Second,
And then on the motion, the roll call, I've got to look back up to see, Christine Joy,
Yes.
Lee
approved.
Becky Coletta,
Yes,
Stephen Santisonio,
Yes,
Sandra Wright,
yes,
Noreen O'Toole.
Yes.
And Becky, did you say yes?
yes, I did.
Thank you.
And he didn't mention me, I don't think so. Lee Hartman, yes.
Oh, that's who I didn't
Mm.
hear from you, but yes, thank you, Lee. That's unanimous. And just as a matter of fact, so I've just pulled up and it was in the packet, there are the terms that were in there. So thank you to the officers for,
And on behalf of the delegates, or at least from this delegate, thank you for willing to volunteer your time to serve.
Thank you, Lee.
yes.
Thank you, Lee.
and from this executive director, let me tell you, it's been really helpful. So thank you.
Lee, I would have tried to pull you in, but I hear that you might be retiring at some point. in the
Yeah,
year.
my goal is to wrap it up in Plymouth at the end of this year. So somewhere in November or December, I will be out doing something else, but not this. Yeah, it's not fun anymore. People are just not fun.
No, no.
No, they're not.
And what I had in the packet for you as members, I don't need anything right now, but I've been working hard on filling some of these voids. John Costa has been working with the town to fill the delegate or the alternate. He's not sure what he's going to do. There are some blanks. I've been reaching out to the communities, getting folks. Plimpton has been over a year. We've had no one, and I've reached out 3 times to the town.
Good
And then
luck.
the town of West
Isn't Christine Joy on there?
Christie.
No, they kicked me to
Joy
the
is the
curb, girlfriend.
oh,
Yeah, what
They wanted
happened?
fresh eyes.
Yes,
Oh.
fresh eyes as delegate at large, but anyway, I did want to show that I'm working on filling some of these vacancies. We're doing a lot in Plimpton, a lot transportation wise and open space and housing plan. I really try to, I need to try to figure out a way just to get some representation, but it's the request is there. And then the last item that's going to need an action in, I'm going to make a recommendation, but once I go through this is coming due. It just was timely that we weren't going to have a meeting in, the annual meeting was going to be the day after. So these are coming through, coming up. This is a certificate. And there were various, we did an assessment of the area community banks that had certificates that were similar. Our rate, just by the way, was 4.41 for a 1-year term. So, and unfortunately, it was really hard to try to get these rates because some of them, they don't tell you what the rate is until the day after. So, Charlie, we're going to recommend, I forget, so without going through them, you can see probably the higher of the amount really is Eastern Bank. It's a 6-month or a 10-month. But we're recommending to stick with Northeastern Savings. Their rate, we're going to suggest a 9-month. It's at 3.75, so close to what we're getting. Here's the challenge. It's existing there. In order for us to go to a different bank, that means coordinating time, getting there, moving the money. It's just time. And as simple as it sounds, because it's not too far, it's just one more thing on the plate. So what I'm going to recommend, and Charlie and I chatted about this, is to stick with the 9-month at the 3.75.
Just for the record, I'm gonna recuse myself because my husband works for one of the banks.
Okay,
How much money would you lose by going to Northeastern versus the one just above it, sorry, Eastern Bank?
Charlie, we talked a little bit about that, didn't we? Because we have, what's the amount that's in the bank is 108,000.
8,774.15. Yeah.
I did not do a calculation on that, Stephen.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah. If I could, and again, it's a very good
I think it's
question.
about $800. If I just say like 0.0075 times 108. Oh, I'm not supposed to say anything. Sorry.
That's all right. You're serving as a resource.
Hey,
You're not indicating it. You're getting to an amount that's helpful to answer the question.
it's like a de
consulting.
minimis amount. That's not
Yeah.
a whole lot.
But in 9 months or before 9 months,
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to maybe think about that. It's a lot of money in one bank. We could, this came up pretty quick. Obviously, Brenda is on a vacation day, so she's not able to be here. We ran out of time because she was working on NIGRA rates and audit information. So, like I said, Charlie and I got together earlier today, and we really kind of did an assessment about staff management and still keeping pretty close to the rate that we currently have, but do it for the 9-month CD and not the 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that, Mary, but I'd like to really revisit this in the 9 months and look at moving it to where we get the most for it. But that'll put us at a better time of year if it's 9 months, because that would be what, March?
Right. And you know what, Christine, we will be having a finance meeting before the annual meeting. So on the 24th, I'll have this on the agenda
Okay.
to review CD and look at this and have a deeper conversation.
Okay.
But I would still need a motion.
Motion so moved.
I'll second.
On roll call, Becky Coletta.
Abstain.
Oh, thank you. Lee Hartman,
Approved.
Christine Joy,
Approve.
Stephen Santisonio,
Approved.
Sandra Wright,
Approve.
and Noreen O'Toole.
Approve.
Okay. So now, if I could, I do not have any other matters for today. So if I can stop sharing, and then if I could just do a pause on the.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. No, okay.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we're calling to order the executive nominating committee for the ROM at 5:35 p.m. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. The Notice of Non-Discrimination Rights and Protections to Beneficiaries with regard to Federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 for more information. Thank you. Okay, roll call.
Yes, Becky Coletta,
Here.
Lee Hartman, Christine Joy,
Here.
Lee's on mute.
Stephen Santisonio.
Present. Present.
Thank you. And then I have Sandra Wright
Present.
and Noreen O'Toole.
Present.
I believe I've got everybody this time. Okay. And so the first item, these are,
So we
Do-
just need to approve the minutes from
Yes.
November 13th, 2024. And I know that not everyone likes to vote if they weren't there, although if we need a quorum, you are entitled to vote, even if you did not attend the meeting. So Stephen Santisonio,
That was it.
is the only person here. So in order to approve these minutes, we would need to ask people who were not at the meeting to approve the minutes, which again is legally permitted. But people can do what they are comfortable
So
with.
a motion is needed to
So
accept.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as complete.
I'd like to, make a motion. There's a typo
Okay.
on 6A where it should say, not, it says spring of 2024. It should say spring.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a stickler.
Oh,
That's
So
okay. Thank
I'll amend my motion as changed.
up to the squares.
Second.
Perfect. Okay.
And I'll second the motion.
Thanks.
And now the motion. So Becky Coletta,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Christine Joy,
Yes.
Maureen O'Toole,
Yes.
Stephen Santasonio,
yes.
Sandra Wright.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we just need to, we have our ROM officers, obviously. Everyone on this call, I think, knows that we just mirror our OCPC officers. So can we have a motion to approve this slate of officers?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll
Lee
second.
Hartman, second.
Becky Coletta,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Stephen Santasonio,
Yes.
Sandra Wright,
Yes.
Noreen O'Toole,
Yes.
Christine Joy.
Yes.
Get everybody?
Yeah, and I think that brings us to what we needed to do tonight. So
It was, Megan asked me to make sure that everybody knows about the upcoming annual meeting. If you have not responded yet, please let her know.
and let us know if you're going to be in person for planning food, right?
Correct. If you need us to share the link or the information, I'll send that out to everybody. And other than that, that's all.
Did we have minutes for the other, the regular group that we missed, or were there no minutes for the last executive? We did
they were
minutes
not
for
in the
ROM.
Package. I did look just before the meeting, Lee. I did not see any,
Okay,
so my apologies for that.
no, that's okay. Just wanted to make sure we didn't miss it. And we
No.
could always go kind of back and do it by consensus or something if we needed.
Oh, do me a favor, while I have you, I'm just gonna go right back into it, just to make sure No, we went right into the, there were no minutes.
Okay,
Thank you for,
Mary,
yes,
on the 24th, we're still having the finance committee, right?
that is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Thank you.
All right. If nobody has other questions, can we get a motion to adjourn the ROM meeting?
Motion so moved.
Thank you. Second.
second.
All right, guys. Thank you. Enjoy this beautiful evening.
Thank
Yes.
you,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
And
Night, everybody.
so Mary,
Oh, yeah.
no, just real quickly for you. I have a planning board meeting that